So, thank you, Kate, very much. On a bitterly cold day, it's great to have such a warm welcome. And as Kate said, the idea over the last, I don't know, quite a few years of having this Christmas preparation day is to partly, I suppose, maybe give a break from the hustle and the bustle of consumerism around Christmas, and but also to try to penetrate a little more deeply through our own experience in solitude and in community into the meaning of Christmas, into the mystical and the existential meaning of it, and why we actually celebrate it 2018 times anyway. I'd like to, and as Kate said, we'll have a good opportunity to meditate together, so I hope whatever I say will pass into the mists of forgetfulness very quickly, but we don't forget the experience of contemplation that we enter into in meditation, however imperfectly we may think we do it. When we meditate, we are stepping into that contemplative dimension of ourselves, and hopefully we learn to let go of any idea of success or achievement and see it as a gift that we are accepting. A very important symbol of Christmas is the exchange of gifts. Maybe the incarnation itself is the supreme gift of self. And when we give presents to those we love, and hopefully also maybe to those we don't love, then we are giving ourselves. It's a symbol of a self-giving to the other. And like any gift, the giving is only half of it. The other half of it is the receiving. And sometimes receiving is more difficult than giving. When you're giving, you have the upper hand, or you're the generous one. But we need an equal generosity to be able to receive a gift in the right spirit. I was with my family a couple of Christmases ago, and the young children were being swamped with an unbelievable number of gifts, and it was a sort of a orgy of unwrapping and wrapping, and they were so excited when they saw what they had, but then another package was thrust into them, and they had to unpackage that, and they forgot about the previous one. I think in the contemplative dimension, there's only one gift. There's only one giving, and we're not distracting ourselves with multiple desires. We are focusing upon the essential gift of being itself. And as John Main said about meditation, we accept the gift of our being in the silence and the work of meditation. And we have to be as generous in receiving as the giver is in giving. That's the trick of a happy life, perhaps. So we're going to take enough time in meditation today to be able to earn the real culmination of this day, which is mince pies at 3:30. The real gift. So let's begin with one thought which we can let go of fairly quickly, but maybe a good thought that we can entertain in preparation for this entering into the giving and the receiving of meditation. And it comes from the prologue to the Gospel of John. This is the passage with the key words of Christmas. The Word was made flesh. And everything else, really, in Christian thought and discussion and theology and action is a commentary or an exploration of the meaning of those few words. Et verbum caro factum est, and the Word was made flesh. And dwelt among us, lived among us. And then it says, in the beginning of the prologue, speaks about where the Word that became flesh came from. And it came from beyond the horizon of the universe, from beyond our imagination, from beyond anything that we can name or understand. In the beginning. It came from the beginning that is immeasurable. Maybe the source is the better word. In the beginning, the Word already was. And this Word, the self-expression of the divine being, within the divine being, but the self-expression of it, maybe the self-knowledge of God, came into the world. He was in the world, but the world, though it owed its being to him, did not recognize him. Did not recognize him. He came to his own, and his own people would not accept him. But to all who did accept him, to those who put their trust in him, he gave the capacity to become children of God. So, in the popular consumer image of Christmas, it's all sweetness and light. But in the mystical understanding of Christmas, the sweetness and the light are perfectly genuine, but they take account of the bitterness and the darkness of life as well, of the world. And the story of Christmas is full of very dark shadows and deep problems of suffering. And here, at the very heart of the narrative, of the story, of the message, there is this description of the Word coming to his own, that owed its being to him. Everything that came into being through the Word. But he was not recognized. Well, imagine how terrifying it would be if you went home this Christmas and you rang the bell and they opened the door and they looked at you and they said, "Who the hell are you? This is our Christmas." You say, "I'm a member of the family. I don't recognize you." Kind of a nightmarish, surreal scene that goes to the very, disturbs us in our own deepest identity, not to be recognized, not to be accepted because you're not recognized. So this is the good news is that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, but the shadow of that bright light is this experience of non-recognition and of rejection. Many people, when they speak about meditation and how it has touched and is changing their lives, will struggle for words really to describe it. I was talking to somebody the other day who has become a very committed meditator. It has transformed his life and his way of working, and the people he works with told me that he's a new man in the last year, and much easier to work with, and it has sort of brought him alive in an extraordinary way. And he reminded me of the very first time he meditated, which was at a meeting, large gathering, and I was asked to speak about meditation and give a talk, but we only were allowed 10 minutes to meditate. Squeezed it in this very busy schedule. So I thought, well, 10 minutes is better than no minutes. But when I was talking with some of them afterwards, and he thanked me, and I said, have you meditated before? And he said, no, first time, and I have no words to describe what happened to me in those 10 minutes. And he didn't have any words to describe it, but you could tell that he had discovered or uncovered an experience of himself, capacity for being, that was quite new to him. And he said, what do you think I should do? Well, I said, well, why not meditate? So he's done that. He's just simply made it part of his life. He's accepted the gift. The gift came to him in unexpectedly immediate and deep way. But I said, don't expect, of course, to have that experience every time you meditate. And quite probably or possibly you won't ever have that experience again, because it will change you, and you'll be on a journey which is new every time. Anyway, he accepted the gift. But I think, like a lot of people who understand experientially, directly, the value of this work of meditation that we will do now, they don't have to be persuaded of it. They don't need to look at all the scientific medical research that shows all the benefits and all the good things it can do for you. Those are interesting, but I don't think anybody meditates seriously just because of the scientific and medical research into the benefits. But I think that people who have understood experientially, intuitively, what this gift is and why it needs to be accepted as generously as it is given, and it's in fact given with increasing generosity. It doesn't run out, and you don't get bored with it, and you don't get sort of overloaded by Christmas presents. It's not that kind of gift. It's a single gift that is refreshed and repeated and renewed and is always new, but always deeper and fuller. So, what I think a lot of people will say as they struggle to explain it is, it feels like coming home. Simply that. It feels like coming home. Coming home to myself, first of all. Coming home to the world in which we are situated. And knowing that we are recognized. that we recognize ourselves and accept ourselves as we are, with all our ups and downs, and that we are recognized in some way that lies beyond the horizon of our understanding or of our ability to describe. So I think Christmas, if we approach its mystical meaning, if we want to use that word, it just means it's not scientific, it's not merely rational. If we approach Christmas in its mystical or its spiritual sense, we understand the meaning of meditation more deeply and more amazingly. So let's take our time to meditate now, at the beginning of our day together. One of the key ideas, if that's the right word, or mystical ideas of Christmas is embodiment, incarnation. And I was on the tube yesterday and I was looking around. And I think about 75% of the people in the carriage were on their devices, on their phones. And the person right opposite me was watching. I noticed that more and more people are watching movies on planes and trains and buses, and even walking from one line to another on the tube. In tube stations, they're watching movies. It's really, if you were to do a science fiction film, it wouldn't seem so strange. People living in their heads. And the guy opposite me was having a great time, whatever he was doing. He was laughing, and he wasn't talking to anybody because he was in the tube, but it was, whatever it was his own little bubble of digital autonomy. And it seemed well, weird, and at the same time frightening, especially because because we get so much into our head through the digital universe that we have created for ourselves. So, meditation is not like that. Meditation is not tuning out the world and putting in 2 earphones and living in your own little autonomous universe. It's about solitude, but it's not about isolation. Because in that solitude, we discover and realize the web of relationships in which we have our being and live and move. So the first step in meditation is to really physically position ourselves, and so the posture of meditation that we take is important. It will help us to stay alert, to be relaxed, so the body is not a distraction, but the body is also trained a little bit by sitting upright with your feet on the ground and your hands on your lap or your knees. So there's a kind of alertness. You're not exactly standing to attention like a soldier, but you are practicing a certain physical alertness and discipline. So your posture is the first thing to be aware of, and that also helps to help you realize that meditation is not what you think, or what you watch, or what you imagine. That it is a work, a practice, an experience of the whole human person that we are, with what we know and what we don't know about ourselves, all included in it. So let's take a moment to embody ourselves just by sitting upright. with your back straight. Relax your shoulders. Relax the muscles of your face. Many kinds of tension tend to separate us from that physical, mental, spiritual wholeness. So by relaxing to the right degrees, not so much that you slouch or fall asleep, but relaxing to the right degree will help to wake up. Close your eyes lightly. Just take a few moments to be aware of your breathing. That helps in a very simple physical way to take the attention off your thoughts. The stream of thought, imagery, feelings, looking for expression in images or desires or anxieties. So just to take the attention off that stream of imagination and thought, not to repress it, not to fight it, not to try to blank out your mind, but simply to lay aside your thoughts, like waves hitting the shore. Just let it hit the shore and then let it go. And to help us to do that and to go deeper on this journey, we take our word, our mantra. By saying the word faithfully during the meditation, and from day to day, the word becomes flesh. It takes root in our heart. Choosing the word is important because we stay with the word, the same word. The word we recommend is the word Maranatha. If you choose this word, Aramaic word that means come Lord, repeat the word gently, faithfully, simply, in 4 syllables, Ma-ra-na-tha. Articulate it clearly in your mind, but without trying too hard, without too much effort, as lightly as you can, so that you can say it faithfully, continuously. Ma-ra-na-tha. Let's conclude the meditation with a short reading from Seraphim of Sarov. Saint Seraphim of Sarov is one of the most well-known and much best loved saints in the Orthodox and Russian Church. He's an 18th century monk, known as a great ascetic, but unlike many ascetics, he saw the difference between the means and the end. And the heart of his teaching is what we might call the illustration or the insight into what happens to us when we accept the gift, when we really understand the reciprocity of the gift, the giving and the receiving. What a change, it works in our human nature and personality, and as an extension, what a transformation it initiates in the world we inhabit. He says, you cannot be too gentle, too kind. Shun even to appear harsh in your treatment of each other. Joy, radiant joy, streams from the face of the one who gives and kindles joy in the heart of him who receives. All condemnation is from the devil. Never condemn each other. We condemn others only because we avoid knowing ourselves. When we gaze at our own failings, we see such a swamp that nothing in another can equal it. That is why we turn away and make much of the faults of others. Instead of condemning others, strive to reach inner peace. Keep silent. Refrain from judgment. This will raise you above the deadly arrows of slander, insult, and outrage, and will shield your glowing hearts against all evil. One of Sarah's most famous insights, you have probably heard, is a short aphorism. Acquire a peaceful spirit, and around you thousands will be saved. Acquire a peaceful spirit, and around you thousands will be saved. So I was talking when we began about the experience of coming home. The theological heart of Christmas is that the Word of God, through whom everything came into existence, comes home to his own, to the world, to us. That through the Word, the whole cosmos came into existence. The Big Bang, which is as far back as rationally or scientifically we can see, 13 billion years ago, Big Bang, and time and space and galaxies and dark holes and black holes and dark energy and dark matter, everything came into existence. We can't see beyond that. So, a simple explanation might be this was the moment God created everything. But as far as we know, there have been an infinite series of Big Bangs as well. It's all bigger than we can possibly imagine. And the mystery, of course, is that this initial creation is continuing. And we don't understand yet, anyway, why the universe is expanding. So now it's, I forget the number, I think it's 89 billion light years. So much bigger than it was at the beginning. And that expansion of the universe, which you might think of as the natural result of an explosion, things get thrown in all directions, But after a certain amount of time, the fourth law of thermodynamics comes into play and things begin to slow down, begin to run out of energy. But that isn't happening. The expansion rate of the cosmos is accelerating. We don't know why it's accelerating. So the scientists think that it's the 75% of the mass of the universe that we don't understand, can't investigate, can't label or analyze in any way, but we know that it's there, which we call dark matter, that is the energy that is pushing the universe into this accelerating expansion. Doesn't feel like it, sitting here in Camberwell on a cold winter's day, but that's what we are part of, this huge cosmic expansion. And perhaps the deepest religious insight that humanity has come to is that each human being is a cosmos or a microcosmos of this whole that we are part of, that even physically we are made up of this same matter, the stardust, that the energy that was radiated out at the moment of the Big Bang is distributed equally around the universe, and therefore in our physical and psychological makeup as well. So we don't just look at this extraordinary picture of creation, but we are carried along by it. We wake up within it as we're being swept along and see a little bit more, maybe, each step of our journey, how we are a microcosm of this cosmos. In the Upanishads, it says that at the heart of the human being, in the deepest center of the heart, there is this tiny little space, the size of the tip of a thumb. But within that space is everything, is the whole universe, is the whole cosmos. The sun and the moon and the stars are all in that tiny space. So, the great symbol of Christmas is the Christ child, the newborn, smallest visible form of the human. But in that tiny and utterly vulnerable little entity, being, the human children are the offspring, are the most vulnerable. They need to be looked after and nurtured for much longer than any other mammal. So the human being is born into total vulnerability. And perhaps it's that need for care and nurture that accompanies us, and we hope will be met by loving parents and peaceful societies, that the child that is nurtured and reared for years and years and years by devoted, doting parents, that this child becomes the conscious human being, fed by love in a way that no other mammal is. So here again, the paradox between the tiny and the cosmic, the paradox between the most vulnerable entity that we can imagine, the newborn child that couldn't last a few days without constant care and attention, and the human consciousness that is capable of awakening to itself and capable of loving as God loves. We are nurtured by love in order to develop this capacity, this divine capacity for love ourselves. So, the beginning of the prologue of John's Gospel, in a very compact way, opens up for us this understanding of the human within the cosmological scheme of things. The individual, not only within the culture or the family or the tribe or even the race or the species, but the human being, the individual, seen as a living microcosm of the whole cosmos of which it is part. And to highlight that and bring home to us that extraordinary vision of the human in its smallness and in its greatness, we're given this description of the Word coming to his own and not being recognized, not being accepted. Home is a place and it's a space. It's where we are born and reborn, where we grow and learn and leave. We have to leave home. And yet we come back home, especially at Christmas. So home is a place both of nurturing and of sending out, being pushed out of the nest at the right time, we hope. But also the place where we will always come back. So home isn't necessarily just the house you grew up in. Children, or adult children, often get angry with their parents because they're selling the family home because it's too big as an empty nest, but they like to have a place they can go back to. But it's more than just the family house that you grew up in or have long associations with. It's of course, it's the family itself. The home is the network of relationships, the nexus of familial ties and bonds, and the knowledge that you have of the people that you grew up with, or the people, which is a knowledge that nobody else, even your husband or your wife or your children, can't have of you because they didn't know you so long ago. So it's that deep, inclusive, comprehensive knowledge that we have. I had a little reunion with some of my university friends recently, and we sort of fell immediately into the relationships, the trust, the friendship that we had many years ago, and some of us haven't seen each other for many years. So there's a knowledge that you have of other people that is just implicit. It's not necessarily knowing secrets about them, it's just knowing them as they were early on, or at the very beginning, of course, in the case of our parents. So that really is perhaps the real meaning of home, and of being recognized, of being known. And without that, we are wounded, we are weakened. Our capacity for leaving the nest, our capacity for flourishing is damaged. And of course, to some degree, we all are damaged and wounded, and we need to find what perhaps we didn't find early on in our lives, or that any aspect of it that was incomplete has to be found in a new way later. But home, therefore, is this place where we are recognized, that we come back to be welcomed, loved, fed, restored. And interestingly, this is the kind of language that the contemplative uses when we try to describe this indescribable experience of meditation, coming home. Coming home, not just recognizing, but also into the experience of being recognized. Recognized by who? By what? We speak also of meditation as a journey. And the Christmas story, the Nativity story, has several journeys within it, doesn't it? We have the journey to Bethlehem for the census. We have the journey of the Magi, a long journey, a hard journey we had of it. And then, of course, the exile, or when the Holy Family have to leave for Egypt. So, although our iconic symbol of Christmas is the coziness and the security of the manger, and everybody positioned predictably around the newborn child, this picture of a stable family unit. Well, that's the home, but it doesn't have, but where is it? It's a little cave somewhere, or a manger, and it's a brief physical security before becoming refugees. So the experience of meditation is often described as a journey and a sense of coming home. Joseph Campbell, the anthropologist, popularized the motif of the hero and the heroic quest. Spoke about this archetypal, universal symbol of describing the human journey in terms of the hero setting out or being sent out on a quest to find something or to discover something. And he identified, I won't go through them all, but quite interestingly identified certain features across all cultures and myths, certain common features of this way of expressing the human journey as a quest, the heroic quest. And it begins by starting from the ordinary world. So, just nothing, not a very special day, just going to work and coming back and cooking your meal and doing a few emails. So nothing very special happening. Your ordinary life. And then there is a call to adventure. We're in Advent. Halfway, I suppose. Halfway, a bit more, through Advent. The word literally means coming towards. It also gives us, or related to the word adventure, which is something out of the ordinary. Do you remember in The Hobbit when Frodo Baggins is very cozy, little hobbit, very English sort of scene of little village life, everything cozy, predictable, and very happy, having 2 breakfasts every day like hobbits do, and smoking his pipe. So this sort of lovely, ordinary life, everything is, this is what politicians would like to summon up briefly in order to get elected. Vote for me and you can live like the hobbits forever. But then, remember, when all these elves and, I don't know what were they, giants and extraordinary people suddenly turn up at his house and eat him out of house and home and totally disrupt his domestic bliss. And then he's just hoping they're going to go. And then, worst of all, he realizes that they are talking about an adventure. And then, even worse, that they are expecting him to go on this adventure. And he says, I think somewhere, he said, hobbits don't like adventures. We don't want to do this. We just want to live a quiet, ordinary life. Leave us alone. Pull up the drawbridge, lock the door, close the curtains, turn on the TV. Just cozy and safe. I don't want adventures. How many of us really want adventures? We love reading about people who go on solo sailing trips around the world or climb mountains or walk across the Antarctic, and we applaud them when they land and write stories about them, but most of us don't want to do that. So the second element is from the ordinary world is turned upside down. It's disrupted. And the incarnation, the fleshing of the Word, is a big disruption of the human world. And not surprisingly, there was a lot of resistance to it. Not only was he not recognized and rejected, but even subsequently, one of the great theological arguments that really wasn't just about intellectual ideas, but about how we understand the gift of being, was the dispute over whether the divine and human nature of Jesus. Seems a little abstract, a little sort of academic, but actually, what you believe about that, or how you are open, or how you trust, or how you perceive the meaning of Jesus, his nature, that makes a big difference to your point of view about life, and therefore about how you live. And perhaps many of us are a little bit wobbly on that. Jesus was a great human being. He's one of the greatest human beings, great teacher. Why do we have to believe that he was divine? Why was he more divine than the Buddha or Confucius or Krishna or anybody else? So that right from the very beginning, we see how Jesus disrupts the coziness of the world. It's not such a peaceful world like the Hobbit's world. It's a pretty unhappy world of tyrants who can order a genocide. So it's not really such a peaceful, happy world, as we get little pockets of it in between wars and atrocities and plagues and famines and financial disasters. We get our little moments of coziness, and we try to keep our little cozy nests dry. But it disrupts this world and insists that we look at ourselves differently and at our world and the potential of our world differently. Think of that quotation from Seraphim of Sarov. Could we really live like that without condemning as the devil condemns? Because condemnation is division. Division is diabolic, dualistic. And what would enable us to live in this other way? Well, this story that we gather around today and at Christmas is a story that contains much more than just a theological assertion or an idea. It contains a picture of the world that we are part of and that we have to take a position on, even if it takes us a few decades to decide what our position on it is. I think that anyone who meditates is going to read this story in a different way than the person who doesn't meditate or hasn't opened up in themselves this experience of themselves as a microcosm, as a mysterious creation expanding beyond our imagination. If we don't have some sense of ourselves with this wonder of our own being, I thank thee for the wonder of my being, the psalm says, if we don't have some sense of that depth within ourselves and that wonder of our own existence, I think this story seems pretty sort of fable-like, very pretty sort of twee or pretty unexceptional or something we easily dismiss. But when that self-knowledge has begun to awaken in us, and meditation awakens it, then these meanings begin to come to us through the stories and through our sharing of the meaning of these stories with each other. It's not just sitting down and reading them or repeating them to yourself. They need to be shared as well. So the next stage is this call to adventure, and then there is, according to this pattern of the heroic quest, there is a refusal to set out on this journey. And that's a refusal we see in many of the prophets. Elijah or Jonah didn't want to be called out on this quest with this mission. Just leave me alone. And then in many of these stories, myths, the turning point in the mind of the individual, of the hero who is not yet a hero, is meeting a mentor, meeting someone who helps them to understand themselves and their destiny and what they're capable of. And once that communication has happened, you can't refuse anymore. To refuse would be to deny yourself, to refuse yourself. So who are those mentors in our lives, the teachers in our lives, through whom, the gurus in our lives, through whom this sort of catalyst happens? We all have our gurus, our parents. The word guru in Indian culture doesn't only refer to the monk sitting cross-legged in a cave in the Himalayas, but any kind of teacher. Even our parents are gurus for us. Anyone who helps us to awaken to ourselves and to give us confidence to set out on this quest. And again, in that same tradition, there is the sense that although there may be many individual gurus in our lives, parents or family or siblings or teachers at school, or maybe and spiritual or religious figures, and so on, and the people with whom we form deep relationships, deep friendships, but that all of these multiple gurus in our lives, little manifestations that push us along and disrupt us a little bit, but underneath them all is the Sadguru, the root guru. And this is the mysterious, the invisible, the imperceptible, but the dark energy, really, that we can't see, we can't define, but is the presence that pushes, that creates and pushes and develops and accompanies us for our own good, and sometimes pushes us into places we prefer not to go to. So, and then the journey begins, then the quest begins. We set out on this journey, and we make lots of mistakes, and we have lots of failures. And there are graces and encounters along the way that help us to recover from our failures or disasters or setbacks, and to start again, to set out again. In the same way, if we think of meditation as this quest, or one aspect of this quest, maybe a central conscious expression of this quest of life, then I think we can see how most of us probably came across this teaching, this possibility, that this is something we could do that we hadn't thought of before, or we'd only thought other people, rather weird people, might do. And so this is a practice that now has, for some reason or other, come into my life, or I heard about, or I met somebody, or a friend spoke about it, or I went to a talk, or I read a book. It may be very light and tangential at first. It may not be like photos, unexpected visitors all pouring in and totally disrupting. But it is a disruptive newcomer into our universe. And the majority of people would say, yes, I would like to do this, but it's a bit too much of an adventure at the moment. I haven't got time for it. And I've got lots of other things I've got to do. I've got to build my career. I've got to have all my doctor's appointments. I've got, all sorts of things I have to do. So one day, I will maybe set out on this adventure. But then, so we postpone, or we avoid, or we deny, but it may continue to just be present, coming towards us, calling us to something that we don't feel quite ready for yet. So we try, and we fail, and we give up, and then it comes back, and we start again. Circumstances, people, various stimuli can reignite this sense of a call, of being summoned to a practice that in itself seems fairly ordinary, except I just can't fit it into my daily life. But also, when you begin to think about it and to see it happening in your life, you realize is a great adventure, is a great quest. And that process of setting out on the quest or coming home, because in many of these great myths, of course, it's often a story of a hero finding his origin, coming home and recognizing it and finding himself and being recognized by the people he meets there. So there is this growing sense over time of the meaning of this journey, this inner journey, if you like, that we are making. But the inner journey is a bit of a misnomer, because it's not just an inner journey, it's a journey that touches the inward and the outward aspects of our dimensions of our identity, because we are changed through this quest, through this practice. Coming home to ourselves may involve a lot of ordeals, the ordeals of self-knowledge and self-acceptance, and humility, and incarnating ourselves, leaving the image, the imagination of ourselves behind as we stop thinking about ourselves and just fall into the only real identity we have, which is who we are embodied in this time and space. That our imagined identity may be wildly off target, that we're just not like that at all, in effect. Maybe that's what our parents or our teachers or our society or our advertising masters tell us that we should be like, but that's not really who we are. So there is an ordeal to be undergone in the work of self-knowledge, stroke humility, to come home to ourselves. But in coming home to ourselves, that may make some big changes in us when it comes to how we work, how we live, how we spend our money, how we construct our little hobbit worlds. We may find that we need and want to change our lives in some radical way. Maybe only interiorly, internally, but there will always be a manifestation of it in the outward circumstances of our lives. And perhaps the greatest sign that this is happening, that we are coming home to ourselves, and that this is changing our life, is generosity. Generosity of spirit. There's not a lot of generosity in the world. You see, if you just look at the figures, I was talking to some MBA students the other day, where we teach meditation. And the last class, I was just giving the last couple of classes, and the last class we talk about integrity. So I was speaking about what does this word integrity mean? Wholeness, integral. And so I said, what is the opposite of integrity? And so we talked about that for a while, and I said, well, what about the word disintegration? What I was saying was that the personal integrity, wholeness that we come to, and that's what coming home means, really, coming home to our wholeness, where we belong, where we fit in, where things are in harmony. So coming to our personal integrity changes our way of living. It makes us it gives us greater integrity in the way we work, in the way we live, in the way we tell the truth, in the way we hold to the values that we say we believe in, but which we normally suspend when things get uncomfortable. So the personal integrity leads to a external, active integrity in our lives, and therefore changes the world. And I said to many people today, the world is disintegrating. I was talking at the moment with someone about a piece of news that was published, but it wasn't. We weren't sure whether it was real news. And they emailed me and they said, maybe it's fake news. I never actually met in ordinary, you read about fake news, but I suddenly realized it's very close to home now. We don't know what is real news or not. And we know that our vision of the world, our information that we receive, the way people are trying to persuade us to vote this way or that way or believe this or that, we're enormously vulnerable and gullible and easily deceived. So there's some disintegration of truth, just as a common currency that we take for granted, and in many other ways. And when you look at the world is getting richer, and yet, and it's true, people are being lifted out of poverty, but the gap between the rich and the 4 million, I think it was 4 million people living in technical poverty in the UK, the 5th largest economy in the world. people who can't get a decent place to live, while we have probably apartments up here around Hyde Park, that, hundreds of millions of pounds, which are not even occupied. Something obscene, really. I mean, the world, such as it has always been, the world is divided like this, but never on such a scale. And the gap between the highest paid person in a corporation and the lowest paid getting bigger and bigger and bigger. People, taking bigger and bigger bonuses for less and less productivity. So anyway, I drew the class's attention to some of these pieces of bad news, and I think that most of them understood what I was saying, but there were two students who vehemently got very upset with this idea. No, the world is. This is all fake news. This is all pessimism. This is all negation. This is all politically motivated. I mean, obviously they thought I was kind of a lefty, European lefty, spreading all this bad news and undermining the great American dream of progress, constant, continuous, wonderful progress. And so we're really, really, really angry and annoyed by this this attempt to expose what this malaise and this worrying denial of climate change, or this increasingly corrosive injustice of the distribution of wealth, and so on. So to come home to ourselves in the universe and in our own families and societies, this must involve that our facing dark shadows that are swirling around us. And the Christmas story is full of these dark shadows. The homelessness of the Holy Family, the wiliness of Herod, the massacre of the innocents, the Holy Family going out into exile. The rest of the story is full of dark shadows as well. The brighter the light that shines, the darker the shadow that is created when anything blocks it. With a strong light, and you block the light, the shadow is going to be darker. So unless we face that, and the Christmas story faces it, unless we face it in ourselves and in our world, economically, financially, psychologically, religiously, unless we face these faults and failings within our system, everything that the Bible calls sin, then we will never come home. We will always be in a fantasy world. When people suffer mental illness, differing degrees, there is always some kind of disruption or disharmony or separation between the sense of self, the embodied sense of self, and the imagined sense of self. So the relationship with your body is always disrupted in some way. It's out of kilter. This may be, self-harming or eating disorders, or going to the gym 3 times a day, or some disruption of your embodied reality. So your mind and your body are not working together. The work of restoring that harmony is, I think, at the heart of the Christmas story, really. The Word made flesh. What do we do when somebody is distraught and there are no words to explain or make things better? You embrace them. That's what the body is for, isn't it? I mean, this is the strange thing, our whole culture now is becoming more and more disembodied. Not only what we do when we sit on the train, but our obsession really with, or our attitude, sometimes obsessive, not always, of course, but with the privacy of the body and the touchy, we're touchy about being touched, and our rules, increasingly absurd rules. I mean, the university I read the other day has a program or website or app or something that the students, before they go out with each other on a date, they're encouraged to fill out the, you were telling me that? Somebody was telling me. They have to fill out how far will you go on this date, Can I hold your hand? Can I kiss you good night or something? All this sort of thing. So, what is the sacred language of the Jews? What's the sacred language of Judaism? Hebrew. What's the sacred language of the Muslims? Arabic. What's the sacred language of Hindus? Sanskrit. What's the sacred language of Christians? Latin? Sacred language is, well, it's maybe the common language of the church in the past, but Aramaic, Jesus spoke Aramaic, but we only know about 3 or 4 words of Aramaic, apart from our mantra. What's that? Love. Okay, what? Compassion. Specifically, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, I'm not more than one answer, and I only have one answer at the moment, but what's that? Silence. Prayer. Of course, these are also languages, universal languages of all traditions in a way. What are we celebrating at Christmas? Sorry? The incarnation. The Word becoming flesh. So what is the sacred language of Christianity? The body. What about the body? Difficult to find a better answer, I think, to that question than the body. So let's take a little time now to, wait a minute, let me just get back to my timetable. Oh yes, I think let's take a 10-minute or 5-minute break, and then we'll have time for another meditation. So just a little break now. If you like to stay silent, that would maybe help the day to have a better effect, or at least talk quietly if you need to talk. Think about the body as you answer the needs of the body.